According to the book of Genesis, in the beginning there was a great emptiness. On the first day, God created heaven and earth, calling the light day and the darkness night. Following this, and in the coming days, God created humanity, giving them dominion over the earth, and instructing them to be fruitful and to multiply. And so on the seventh day, God looked upon his creation of every animal of the sea and the air and the land. He looked upon Adam and Eve. He looked upon every plant and tree, and at last, God rested. This creation story, like so many others before it, seeks to answer the questions that have been the source of mankind's existential crisis. Why are we here? Who created us? And what, if there is one, is the meaning of life? At the beginning of all things, there was simply the one above all, and from nothing, it crafted the first firmament. In turn, and driven by loneliness, the first firmament created the first forms of life. Naming its children aspirants, they looked to their creator, in turn naming it the universe. Traveling throughout this undeveloped space, the aspirants sought to create life, but like all servants to a creator, sought its approval as well. For those forms of life deemed acceptable by the first universe, their progression was allowed to continue. But for those deemed unacceptable, their progress was halted, their lives ended, and the creation process was begun anew. However, in a far corner of the universe, a small band of aspirants was planning insurrection. In the eyes of these rebels, the life created by their brothers and sisters was a half measure, beings crafted with the belief that the first universe was their only true God. Seeing this as short-sighted and believing that both life and the universe should evolve and come to understand growth, change, and mortality, these aspirants abandoned their namesakes and rechristened themselves the Celestials. Branding them heretics and ordering their destruction, the first universe watched on as the Celestials and aspirants were thrown into a cosmic holy war, resulting in the deaths and destructions of all the aspirants in existence, and the first universe itself shattering into an infinite number of pieces, and thus the multiverse was born. In the aftermath of the Celestial Holy War and recognizing its failures with the first universe, the One Above All set to organizing a new and intricately designed order of power within the multiverse. Serving the role of safeguarding existence itself, the Living Tribunal was designed to exist without emotion and to operate under three tenets. Number 1, to ensure cosmic balance is maintained. Number 2, to ensure no universe became more powerful than the others. And number 3, to ensure balance between the forces of good and evil. In order to carry out these three tenets, the Living Tribunal was provided with three faces representing equity, vengeance, and necessity. Using these three faces, the Tribunal would look upon any scenario requiring its involvement and make an equitable determination as to whether or not a punishment was needed. If all three faces were in agreement, the actions of the Tribunal could range from the removal of one's powers to the complete and utter destruction of entire universes. And so following this, the One Above All turned to the Infinity Stones. Creating a cycle of infinite duplication, the infinite power of the stones would serve as the source of creation for their respective universes. The Space Stone would create the physical space of the universe, including any and all pocket dimensions. The Reality Stone would fill that space with all atomic and subatomic matter. The Soul Stone would serve as the wellspring of life for each universe. The Mind Stone would allow all forms of life to achieve higher states of consciousness. The Time Stone would provide the passage of time for all moments between the universe's formation and its destruction. And the Power Stone would serve as the foundation by which all the other stones could operate at their peak capacities. And so with the formation of our universe some 13.8 billion years ago, this space would give birth to varying cosmic entities representing an aspect of the universe itself. To this end, the cosmic entities of eternity, infinity, death, and entropy came to represent life, death, existence, and destruction. Watching on as the newly formed multiverse began to take form, the remaining Celestials took to this new multiverse, creating duplicates of themselves and copying their power to each universe, all the while seeding life-sustaining worlds with their offspring as a means to increase their number. However, believing their role as the sole creators and shapers of life was being usurped, the Celestials seized the Infinity Stones and destroyed the cosmic entities, fancying themselves divine with no equal in the cosmos. Returning to what they viewed as their natural role, in their hubris, the Celestials failed to recognize the balance that they had created with the destruction of the cosmic entities, and were thus met with the arrival of the Living Tribunal. Judging against the cosmic tyrants, the Tribunal restored the cosmic entities and decreed that the hierarchy of the One Above All was beyond reproach, warning the Celestials that should they attempt to move beyond their station again, their entire race would be met with complete and total destruction. And so, recognizing the Tribunal's authority, the Celestials grudgingly accepted their new role within the universe as creators and shepherds to the evolutionary process of all sentient beings. Following this, and remaining within our universe, the Celestials began traveling the spaceways. With each new life-sustaining world they discovered, the Celestials would use their vast power to plant the building blocks of life on each world. Like a grand cosmic experiment, after a period of 19 cosmic cycles, the Celestials, led by Arishan the Judge, would return to each planet for a 50-day period of examination in what became known as a host. The first host would analyze the planetary life, select its dominant race, and alter its genetic structure. 1/3 of that race would have their genes accelerated to the peak of their race's evolutionary state, granting them vast cosmic energies, and would go forward as Eternals. Another third would have their genes destabilized, creating unchecked physical mutations, and would go forward as Deviants. Finally, the last third would have their genes modified to provide the potential for future mutation after a predetermined period of time. And while this time period varied from one world to the next, the result was that once this final third reached an evolutionary threshold, the genes would begin to activate, granting powers ranging from simple telekinesis and shapeshifting to total control of the fabric of reality itself. The arrival of the second host would provide a period of observation by the Celestials. Unlike the first host, which served as a prime mover, the second and third hosts would simply monitor their experiments, ensuring that the roles established for the Eternals and the Deviants across the universe remain unchanged, and that should either group abandon their role, the consequences would be swift and harsh. Finally, the fourth celestial host would determine if their experiments were worth saving or culling. In what has become known as the Day of Judgment, Ereshkigal would judge the worthiness of their planetary experiments by analyzing their desires, their actions both past and present, as well as the overall progression of the planet's race. If the Celestials were satisfied, they would leave their experiments to continue on their path without interference. However, if the Celestials were displeased, Ereshkigal would judge against their experiments. Using the Power Stone, Isan the Searcher would then be tasked to completely cleanse the world in question, eradicating all forms of sentient and organic life. In turn, the Celestial Gardener would plant life seeds, which would begin the life-growing process once again. As a result, this role undertaken by the Celestials became their standard course throughout the entirety of the universe. Traveling from world to world, the Celestials would conduct vast cosmic experiments, all the while having no idea that on a small blue world in the Sol system, the totality of their experiments would come to fruition in the form of a young boy.
It was the first film we had done as our own studio. I had been involved and Marvel had been involved at certain levels on other films before Iron Man 1, but always as a partner, never as the lead decision maker. And I learned a lot working on other films at other studios, other Marvel films at other studios up to that point. And when we got the chance to do it ourselves, there was a lot of pressure involved, but I was very comfortable with that because if we were to fail, at least we would have failed with the best intentions.